respected viewers, beloved seekers of truth and wisdom, let me ask you something that might shake you awake tonight. What if I told you that the difference between dying broke and dying free isn't about how much you earn, but about what you do with what stays? What if the secret to wealth was never hidden at all, but simply ignored, because it required something most people refuse to give the time? You know, I've sat in boardrooms with billionaires. I've watched empires rise. I've seen fortunes built and fortunes lost. And I'll tell you something that might surprise you. The greatest wealth I've ever witnessed didn't come from the flashy deals. It didn't come from the lucky breaks or the overnight sensations. It came from something far more humble, far more patient, and far more powerful. It came from dividends. Now, I know what you're thinking. Dividends. That's it. That's the big secret. But stay with me, because what I'm about to share with you isn't just about money. It's about understanding how nature itself, how time itself, works in your favor when you learn to align with it rather than fight against it. Let me take you back to a time when I was younger. Not wiser, just younger. I watched a friend of mine, good man, hard worker, chase every hot stock tip he could find. He'd hear about some company that was about to explode, and he'd pour his money in. Then he'd panic when it dropped, sell at a loss, and jump to the next exciting thing. This went on for years. Meanwhile, there was another man, quiet fellow, didn't talk much about his investments. Worked as a middle manager, nothing fancy. But this man, he did something different. He found 5 companies, good companies, boring companies, really. Companies that made soap, that sold insurance, that bottled drinks people consumed every single day. And these companies, they paid dividends. Every quarter, like clockwork, those checks came in. Small at first, laughably small, some might say. But this man, he didn't spend those dividends. He reinvested them. He bought more shares, which gave him more dividends, which he used to buy even more shares. 15 years later, I ran into both men at a reunion. The first man, the one who chased excitement, was still working, still stressed, still hoping for that one big break that would change everything. The second man, the quiet one, he had retired early, not because he won the lottery, not because he inherited money, but because those boring companies, those steady dividends, had compounded into a stream of income that covered his entire life. He was free. You see, most people completely misunderstand what investing is about. They think it's about buying low and selling high. They think it's about timing the market. They think it's about being clever. But that's not investing. That's gambling dressed up in a business suit. Real investing, the kind that actually builds lasting wealth, is about becoming a partner in excellent businesses. It's about owning pieces of companies that create value, that serve customers, that grow over time, and that share their profits with you. And when a company pays you a dividend, they're not just sending you money. They're saying, you're an owner, you're a partner. Here's your share of what we've built together. Now here's where it gets beautiful. When you're young, when you're just starting, that dividend might be $50, maybe $100. You look at it and think, what can I even do with this? But what if, instead of spending it, instead of dismissing it, you took that dividend and bought more shares? Those new shares, they generate their own dividends next quarter. So now you're not getting $100, you're getting 103, then 106, then 110. It doesn't sound like much, does it? But here's what most people never stick around long enough to see. In year 5, that quarterly dividend that started at $100 might be $160. You're barely noticing the difference. Life continues. You're still working, still grinding, but you keep reinvesting. Year 10 arrives. That same dividend stream, it's now $260 per quarter. You're starting to notice. It's paying for a car payment, maybe a nice dinner once in a while. You keep reinvesting. Year 15, something magical starts to happen. That dividend stream, it's now pushing $500 per quarter, $2,000 a year. It's not covering your life yet, but it's no longer trivial. It's meaningful. And here's what breaks most people's brains. By year 20, if you've chosen well, if you've been patient, if you've reinvested consistently, that quarterly dividend that started at $100, is now over $1,000 every single quarter. $4,000 a year from dividends alone from an initial position that maybe started with $10,000 or $15,000. But that's just one company. Imagine you did this with 5 companies, 10 companies. Imagine you added a little bit each year because you were working and earning. Imagine those companies themselves grew, raised their dividends, rewarded shareholders year after year. By the time you reach year 20, you're not looking at $4,000 annually. You're looking at $20,000, $30,000, maybe $50,000 flowing into your account every single year, regardless of whether you wake up that morning or not. That money doesn't care if you're sick. It doesn't care if you're on vacation. It doesn't care if you're sleeping or working or playing with your grandchildren. It just arrives. This is what financial freedom actually looks like. Not a yacht, not a mansion, not some Instagram fantasy. It's waking up and realizing that your money works harder than you do. It's realizing that time, that patient, relentless, unstoppable force has become your greatest ally instead of your enemy. But here's the part that breaks my heart. Most people never experience this. Not because they can't, not because they're not smart enough, not because they don't earn enough, but because they can't wait. They need the new phone now. They need the fancy vacation now. They need to feel rich now, even if it means staying poor forever. I want to tell you about a woman I knew, single mother, worked as a nurse, nothing glamorous about her life. She was tired most days, worried about bills, worried about her kids' future. But she read something one day, something that changed everything. She read that if she could invest just $200 a month into dividend-paying companies, and if she could do it consistently for 20 years, she might be able to retire comfortably. $200. That's what? A few dinners out, a couple of subscription services, a slightly smaller apartment. She decided to try. Her friends thought she was crazy. Live a little, they'd say. You work so hard, you deserve to enjoy yourself. And she did enjoy herself, just differently. She enjoyed the peace of knowing she was building something. She enjoyed watching those quarterly statements arrive. She enjoyed calculating what her future looked like. The first 5 years were hard. She barely saw any progress. The dividends were tiny. The account balance seemed to crawl. But she kept going. By year 10, something shifted. The dividends were covering her electric bill, then her car insurance, small things but automatic things. By year 15, her dividend income was nearly $500 a month. Real money, life-changing money. By year 20, when her friends were panicking about whether they could ever retire, she walked into her supervisor's office and gave notice. Not because she was wealthy, not because she was special, but because those boring, consistent, patient little dividends had grown into a river that could carry her through the rest of her life. This is the power of dividend growth. It's not magic. It's not luck. It's not even complicated. It's simply a nature. You plant the seed, you water it, you protect it, you give it time. And time, patient, merciless, beautiful time, does what time always does. It compounds. And compounding is the closest thing to magic that exists in this universe. Einstein supposedly called it the 8th wonder of the world, and he was right. Those who understand it earn it. Those who don't pay it. But here's what you need to understand. Compounding doesn't work in months. It barely works in years. It works in decades. And that's why most people miss it. We live in a world of instant gratification. We want results yesterday. We want to see progress every single day. We want the dopamine hit of checking our account and seeing big jumps. But wealth, real wealth, the kind that lasts, the kind that frees you, doesn't work that way. Real wealth is built in silence, in patience, in the quiet accumulation of productive assets that throw off cash year after year after year, while you sleep, while you work, while you live your life. The question is, can you be patient enough? Can you be wise enough? Can you ignore the noise, ignore the temptation, ignore the people who mock you for playing it safe long enough to win? Because if you can commit to 15 years, 20 years of consistent, patient, intelligent investing in companies that pay growing dividends, then I promise you, the person you become, the freedom you experience, the peace you feel, It will be worth every single moment of restraint, because understanding that dividend growth is powerful, that's the easy part. The hard part, the part that separates those who actually build wealth from those who just dream about it, is understanding why most people fail at this, even when they know it works. And the answer might surprise you. It's not about intelligence. I've seen brilliant people go broke. It's not about income. I've seen high earners live paycheck to paycheck. And it's not even about opportunities, because the opportunities are sitting right there in plain sight, available to anyone with a brokerage account. The real problem is emotional. You see, dividend investing requires something that modern society actively works against. It requires delayed gratification. It requires you to plant trees under whose shade you may not sit for many years. And our brains, our poor, ancient brains, they weren't designed for this. We evolved in a world where immediate rewards meant survival. The berry in your hand was better than the promise of berries tomorrow, because tomorrow you might be dead. That wiring, it's still in us. When you see that dividend check hit your account, every cell in your body is screaming, spend it, enjoy it, you earned it. And when you see your account balance stay relatively flat for years, while your neighbor drives home in a new car, while your coworker posts vacation photos from Europe, while everyone around you seems to be living, that voice gets louder. Maybe you're doing it wrong, it whispers. Maybe you're wasting your life. Maybe you should just live a little. I want to tell you about a man I'll call Robert. Not his real name, but his story is real enough. Robert discovered dividend investing in his early 30s. He read the books. He understood the math. He was convinced. He started building a portfolio of solid, dividend-paying companies. For 3 years, he was disciplined. He reinvested every dividend. He added money every month. He watched his portfolio grow slowly but steadily. Then his brother-in-law bought a boat. Now, this might seem like a small thing, irrelevant even. But stay with me. His brother-in-law, similar age, similar income, showed up to a family gathering with photos of this beautiful boat, talked about the weekends on the lake, the sunsets, the memories with his kids, and something shifted in Robert. He went home that night and looked at his investment account, looked at all those dividend statements, all that discipline, all those sacrifices, and he thought, what's the point? Life is short. When am I supposed to actually enjoy this money? Within 6 months, Robert had sold most of his positions. He bought his own boat, had a great summer, posted his own photos. 5 years later, the boat was gone. Sold at a loss because boats are expensive to maintain, and he realized he didn't use it enough to justify the cost. Meanwhile, the companies he'd sold, they'd continued growing, continued raising their dividends. The position he'd abandoned, if he'd kept it, would have been generating enough quarterly dividends to rent any boat he wanted, whenever he wanted, without touching the principal. But he couldn't see that far ahead. He couldn't feel that future. All he could feel was the present moment and the pressure of comparison. This is the invisible killer of wealth, comparison. Social media has made it worse, infinitely worse. Everyone's posting their wins, their purchases, their experiences. Nobody posts their debt. Nobody posts their anxiety about retirement. Nobody posts the truth. And so you sit there doing the right thing, being patient, building your dividend snowball, and you feel like a fool. You feel like you're missing out. You feel like everyone else knows something you don't. But here's the truth nobody wants to hear. Most of those people, the ones showing off, the ones who seem to have it all figured out, they're terrified. They're living on borrowed money, borrowed time, borrowed confidence. They look rich, but they're fragile. One layoff, one medical emergency, one market crash, and the whole facade crumbles. Meanwhile, the quiet dividend investor, the one nobody notices, the one who lives below their means and reinvests consistently, they're building something that can't crumble, can't be taken away, can't be shaken. They're building anti-fragility. To let me explain what I mean by that, when you depend on your paycheck, you're fragile. Lose the job, lose the income, simple as that. When you depend on a business you actively run, you're less fragile, but still vulnerable. You get sick, the business suffers. The market shifts, the business suffers. But when you own pieces of multiple excellent businesses that pay you dividends, Businesses that operate independently of your health, your mood, your age, your location, your A's antifragile. The more time passes, the stronger your position gets. The more dividends you receive, the more shares you buy. The more shares you buy, the more dividends you receive. It's a virtuous cycle, a flywheel. And once it gets spinning, once you give it enough time, it becomes unstoppable. But here's what you need to understand about the timeline. Years 1 through 5. Honestly, they're brutal. You're putting in money. The dividends are tiny. The account grows slowly. You feel like nothing is happening. This is where most people quit. Years 5 through 10. You start seeing glimpses. The dividends are becoming meaningful. Maybe they cover a small bill or two. You realize, oh, this might actually work. But you're still tempted to stop. Still tempted to cash out and use the money for something now. Years 10 through 15. This is where the magic starts to reveal itself. The dividends are substantial. Your account balance is growing faster than you're contributing. You're starting to see the compounding take over. You get excited. You get religious about it. You wonder why everyone isn't doing this. Years 15 through 20. You're in a completely different world now. The dividends might be covering your mortgage, maybe your entire living expenses. You start realizing, I could actually retire early if I wanted to. The stress leaves your body. Your relationship with your job changes. You're no longer desperate, no longer trapped. You're very free, but still working because now you want to, not because you have to. And beyond 20 years, you're not just financially independent, you're wealthy. Not flashy wealthy, not private jet wealthy, but deeply, permanently, peacefully wealthy. The kind of wealth that lets you sleep at night. The kind that lets you be generous. The kind that ripples into your children's lives and their children's lives. 2 now, let me address something important. Something people always ask, but what if I pick the wrong companies? What if they cut their dividends? What if I lose everything? Valid questions. Important questions. Here's the truth. You will make mistakes. Some companies you choose, they'll disappoint you. They'll cut dividends. They'll struggle. Some might even fail. But here's the beautiful part. If you diversify properly, if you own 10, 15, 20 different dividend-paying companies across different sectors, then no single mistake can destroy you. One company cuts its dividend. The other 19 keep paying. One company fails. You still own 19 others. This isn't about being perfect. It's about being prudent. It's about spreading your bets across multiple excellent businesses and letting time work its magic. And here's something most people don't realize. The best dividend-paying companies, the ones with long histories of their raising their dividends year after year, these companies are among the strongest, most resilient businesses in the world. They're not flashy tech startups burning cash and hoping for a miracle. They're boring companies with boring business models that make boring profits and share those profits with you. They're the companies that make products people use every single day. They're the insurance companies, the consumer goods companies, the utilities, the banks, the healthcare companies. They're not going anywhere. 2, I remember sitting with a young couple once, both in their late 20s. They'd heard about dividend investing and wanted advice. They told me they'd saved $15,000. They wanted to know, is it enough? Is it too late? Should we just spend it on a down payment for a bigger house instead? I asked them a simple question. If I could guarantee that in 25 years, this $15,000 would generate $15,000 per year in passive income, would you be interested? Their eyes went wide. Is that possible? They asked. If you choose well, I said, if you're patient, if you reinvest every dividend for the next 15 years, then start living off them in years 15 through 25. Yes, it's not just possible, it's probable. They looked at each other. Something shifted. You could see it in their faces. They weren't just thinking about money anymore. They were thinking about freedom, about choices, about what their life could look like when they were 50, not 70. They invested that $15,000. And the last I heard, 5 years and they're still going strong, still reinvesting, still playing the long game. 2, because that's what this is. It's a game, but not the game most people are playing. Most people are playing who can look richest. It's a terrible game, expensive to play, impossible to win. But dividend investors, we're playing a different game. We're playing who can be free first. And that's a game with patience and discipline that you can actually win. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. This sounds great, but I'm already 40, already 50. I don't have 20 years to wait. Let me tell you something. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is just today. Yes, the math is different if you're starting later. Yes, you'll need to invest more aggressively. Yes, you might not reach the same level of wealth as someone who started younger. But so what? Would you rather reach 65 with some dividend income or with none? Would you rather have a portfolio generating $5,000 a year or zero? The time is going to pass anyway. 5 years from now, you'll either be 5 years closer to freedom or 5 years closer to desperation. The choice is always yours. And here's something beautiful about dividend investing that nobody talks about. It changes who you are. When you commit to this path, when you embrace delayed gratification, when you start measuring your success not in quarterly gains, but in decades of compounding, you become different. You become calmer, more patient, less reactive to market noise, less impressed by flash, less anxious about the future. You start seeing the world differently. You notice which companies are actually excellent versus which ones are just hyped. You start thinking like an owner, not a gambler. And that mindset, that shift, it affects everything. Your career decisions get better because you're not desperate. Your relationships improve money because you're not stressed about money. Your health improves because you're sleeping at night. Wealth isn't just about the money in your account. It's about the peace in your soul. And dividend investing, done right, done patiently, gives you both. So let me ask you something right now. Today, what if you made a decision? What if you decided that for the next 15 years, you're going to consistently invest in quality dividend-paying companies? What if you decided that no matter what happens, no matter what your brother-in-law buys, no matter what's trending on social media, you're going to stay the course? What if you decided to become a patient? Who would you be in 15 years? What would your life look like? What kind of freedom would you have that you don't have today? Now, we arrive at the heart of it all, because knowledge without application is just entertainment. And I didn't come here to entertain you. I came here to change your life, if you'll let me. So let's talk about the as-how, the practical wisdom, the real decisions you'll need to make, and the traps you'll need to avoid. First, let's talk about what makes a great dividend-paying company. You'd think this would be simple. Just find companies with high dividend yields, right? Wrong. Dead wrong. This is the first trap, and it catches almost everyone. A high dividend yield by itself means nothing. In fact, it's often a warning sign. Let me explain. Dividend yield is simply the annual dividend divided by the stock price. So if a company pays $4 per share annually, and the stock trades at $100, that's a 4% yield. Sounds reasonable, right? But what if that same company's stock price drops to $50? Now suddenly, same $4 dividend, but the yield is 8%. Wow, 8%! That's amazing! Or is it? Why did the stock price drop? Is the business struggling? Are they about to cut that dividend? Are investors fleeing because they see trouble ahead? A high yield, very often, is the market screaming at you, danger! This dividend isn't safe! So if we can't just chase high yields, what do we look for? We look for dividend growth. We look for companies that have a long history. I'm talking 10 years, 20 years, sometimes 50 years of not just paying dividends, but raising them year after year after year. These companies are called dividend aristocrats or dividend champions. They're the elite, the proven survivors. The businesses that have thrived through recessions, wars, market crashes, technological disruptions, and through it all, they kept paying shareholders. They kept raising the dividend. Why does this matter so much? Because a company that can raise its dividend every year is telling you something profound about its business. It's saying, we're not just surviving, we're thriving. Our profits are growing, our cash flow is strong, and we're so confident in our future, we're giving you a raise. Let me paint you a picture. Imagine two companies. Company A and Company B. Company A has a dividend yield of 7%. looks attractive. But when you dig deeper, you discover they haven't raised that dividend in 5 years. The business is stagnant. They're hanging on, but barely. Company B has a dividend yield of just 2.5%. Doesn't look as exciting, does it? But then you discover Company B has raised its dividend by an average of 8% every single year for the past 20 years. Now, watch what happens over time. That 7% yield from Company A, in 10 years, if they never raise it, it's still 7%. You're making the same income. Inflation has eroded its value. You're actually getting poorer. But Company B, that 2.5% starting yield, growing at 8% per year. In year 5, your yield on your original investment is about 3.7%. In year 10, it's 5.4%. In year 15, it's 7.9%. In year 20, it's 11.7%. You're now earning more from Company B than you would have from Company A's. And the business is stronger, and the stock price has likely grown substantially. This is the power of dividend growth. You don't need to start with a high yield. You need to start with a growing yield. So how do you find these companies? You look for businesses with several key characteristics. First, competitive advantages, what Warren calls a moat, something that protects the business from competition. Maybe it's a powerful brand that customers love. Maybe it's a network effect where the product gets better as more people use it. Maybe it's patents or exclusive resources or massive scale that competitors can't replicate. Without a moat, any business can be copied, undercut, and destroyed. With a moat, the business can endure for decades. Second, consistent profitability. You want companies that make money year after year, not companies that are almost profitable or projected to be profitable soon. No, real profits, real cash flow, proven over many years. Third, reasonable debt levels. Too much debt and the company is vulnerable. A recession hits, interest rates rise, and suddenly they're in trouble. You want companies with manageable debt so they can weather storms without cutting the dividend. Fourth, a payout ratio that's sustainable. This is the percentage of earnings they pay out as dividends. If a company earns $5 per share and pays out $4 as dividends, that's an 80% payout ratio. That's too high. There's no room for error, no room for growth. You want payout ratios between 40 and 70%. This means the company is sharing profits with you, but also retaining enough to reinvest in growth, pay down debt, and build a cushion for tough times. And fifth, this is critical, a management team that respects shareholders, that communicates clearly, that thinks long term, that has skin in the game, meaning they own significant stock themselves. You want managers who treat the company like their money, because it is. Now, let's talk about sectors. Some industries are naturally better for dividend investing than others. Utilities, excellent. People always need electricity, water, gas. The demand is stable. The cash flow is predictable. These companies can pay reliable dividends. Consumer staples, wonderful. Companies that make toothpaste, soap, food, beverages. People buy these products in good times and bad. Recession resistant. Dividend friendly. Healthcare, often very good. People get sick regardless of the economy. Pharmaceutical companies, medical device makers, healthcare providers, many of them pay strong, growing dividends. Financials can be excellent, but you need to be careful. Banks and insurance companies can pay great dividends, but they're also vulnerable during financial crisis. You need to choose the strongest ones. Industrial companies. Some are wonderful dividend payers. Companies that make essential equipment, provide crucial services, they can be very stable. Technology. Here's where it gets tricky. Most tech companies don't pay dividends. They reinvest everything into growth. But some of the mature tech giants, Microsoft, Apple, and others, they've started paying and growing dividends. These can be excellent choices. What you want to avoid, or at least be very careful with, are highly cyclical industries. Mining companies, oil and gas producers, airlines. These businesses boom and bust with economic cycles, and their dividends often get cut when times get tough. Let me share a story about diversification. There was a man, call him Thomas. Smart guy, engineer by training. He understood dividend investing. He found a company he loved, a utility company with a fantastic dividend history. And he went all in, every dollar into this one company. Why diversify? He'd say, I've done my research. This company is solid. Why dilute my returns with inferior companies? For 8 years, he was proven right. The dividends rolled in. The stock price climbed. He felt like a genius. Then year 9, the company had a major accident at one of its power plants. Lawsuits, regulatory issues, credit downgrades. The dividend was cut in half. The stock price collapsed. And Thomas, poor Thomas, he watched his entire plan crumble. Not because he was stupid, not because the company was a scam, but because he broke the cardinal rule: never, never put all your eggs in one basket, no matter how strong the basket seems. Here's what proper diversification looks like in dividend investing. You want at least 10 to 15 companies, preferably 20 to 30 if you have enough capital. You want them spread across different sectors, some utilities, some consumer staples, some healthcare, some industrials, some financials, maybe some tech. This way, if one sector struggles, the others carry you. If one company disappoints, you've got 19 others still paying you. And here's the beautiful part. With diversification, you can sleep at night. You're not constantly worried about any single company. You're not checking the news every day in a panic. You're calm, patient, confident that your portfolio as a whole will continue generating growing income, regardless of what happens to any individual holding. This is how you build a fortress, not a house of cards. 2. Now, let's talk about the psychological game, because this is where most people lose. You build your portfolio. You start reinvesting dividends. Everything is going according to plan. Then the market crashes. Maybe it's a recession. Maybe it's a pandemic. Maybe it's a financial crisis. Doesn't matter. The result is the same. Your portfolio value drops 30%, 40%, maybe 50%. You log into your account and you feel sick. You've lost years of progress, or so it seems. Every instinct in your body is screaming, sell, get out, protect what's left. This is the moment, that separates the wealthy from the broke. Because here's what you need to understand. If your companies are still operating, still making products, still serving customers, still paying dividends, then nothing has changed. The stock price dropping doesn't mean the business disappeared. It just means other people are panicking, and panic creates temporary discounts. In fact, this is the best time for a dividend investor, because when you reinvest those dividends, you're buying shares at sale prices. You're getting more shares for the same dividend dollars, which means when the market recovers, and it always recovers, you own more shares than you would have if the crash never happened. The crash actually accelerates your wealth building, but only if you don't panic, only if you stay the course, only if you keep your eyes on the dividends, not the stock price. I watched this play out during the 2008 financial crisis. I knew dozens of dividend investors, wonderful, disciplined people. They'd been building their portfolios for years. When the market crashed, about half of them panicked. They sold. They preserved capital. They told themselves they'd buy back in when things stabilized. Of course, they never did. By the time things felt safe again, prices had already recovered. They missed the recovery entirely. The other half, they stayed calm. They kept reinvesting. Some even added extra money, buying shares at 40, 50, 60% discounts. By 2015, the difference between these two groups was staggering. The ones who panicked were still trying to rebuild. The ones who stayed calm, their portfolios had not only recovered, they'd flourished. Those crisis-bought shares were now generating massive dividends. The exact same market conditions, the exact same opportunity, two completely different outcomes. The difference, psychology, emotional control, long-term thinking. 2. So how do you build this emotional strength? First, you educate yourself. You understand that market crashes are as normal. They happen every few years. They're not anomalies. They're features of the system. Since 1950, the U.S. stock market has had a 10% correction, on average, about once per year, a 20% bear market, every 3 to 5 years. If this surprises you, if this scares you, then you're not ready to invest, because it's going to happen. The only question is when. Second, you focus on the right metrics. Stop checking your portfolio value every day. It's irrelevant. What matters is, are your companies still paying dividends? Are they still raising them? If yes, you're winning, regardless of what the stock price says. Third, you zoom out. Don't think about this quarter or this year. Think in decades. Pull up a chart of the stock market over the past 100 years. What do you see? Despite 2 world wars, despite the Great Depression, despite multiple recessions and crashes, despite 9/11 and the financial crisis and the pandemic, the long-term trend is up, always up, eventually. Crashes are temporary. Recovery is permanent. Fourth, you practice gratitude. When dividends hit your account, acknowledge them, appreciate them. Those are real dollars, real purchasing power, real proof that your plan is working. This simple practice, it keeps you focused on what matters. It reminds you why you're doing this. 2, and finally, you need to understand something profound about wealth. True wealth, lasting wealth, doesn't come from being smart or lucky or connected. It comes from being boring. The wealthy people I've known, the ones with real sustainable, generational wealth, they're almost universally boring investors. They don't day trade. They don't chase crypto. They don't have exciting stories about getting rich quick. They own boring companies. They collect boring dividends. They reinvest boringly. They wait boringly for decades. And they end up free. While everyone else is still chasing excitement, still hoping for that one big break, still stressed about money, the boring investor is quietly living a life of abundance, peace, and purpose. Let me tell you about one more person. Her name was Margaret. I knew her in her 70s. Sweet lady. Lived in a modest house. Drove an old car. Wore simple clothes. You'd never guess she was wealthy. But when she passed away, her children discovered she'd left them an estate worth over $3 million. From a lifetime of working as a librarian. How? Dividend investing. Started in her 30s. 40 years of patient, consistent, boring investing. She never made 6 figures. Never inherited money. Never won the lottery. She just invested in quality companies, reinvested the dividends, lived below her means, and let time do its work. By the end, her dividend income alone was over $100,000 per year, more than she'd ever earned working. But she didn't need it. She'd learned to live happily on much less, so it just accumulated, compounded, grew. And now her children and their children, they'll benefit from seeds she planted 50 years ago. That's a legacy. That's wealth. That's what's possible when you understand the power of dividend growth. So let me bring this full circle. You have a choice to make. Right now, today, you can continue living the way most people live, spending everything you earn, hoping something changes, hoping you'll figure it out later, hoping retirement somehow works out, or you can become a dividend investor. You can start small. Maybe it's just $50 a month. Maybe it's $100. Maybe it's more. The amount almost doesn't matter. What matters is that you start, that you commit, that you embrace patience over panic, that you choose boring over exciting, that you plant seeds today for the shade you'll enjoy tomorrow. And I promise you, if you do this, if you truly commit to this path for 15, 20, 25 years, you won't recognize your life. You'll wake up one day and realize you're free. You'll realize that money, that thing that used to stress you out, it's no longer a problem. You'll realize that time, that thing you used to fear, has become your greatest ally. And you'll realize that the best decision you ever made was the decision to be patient. This is the path. This is the way. This is the power of dividend growth over 15 to 20 years. It's not glamorous. It won't make you famous. You won't have exciting stories to tell at parties. But you'll have something far more valuable. You'll have peace. You'll have freedom. You'll have security. And in the end, isn't that what wealth is really about? Beloved listeners, we've traveled far together today. We've talked about numbers, about companies, about dividends and compounding and patience. We've talked about strategy and psychology and discipline. But now, in these final moments, I want to talk about something deeper, something that transcends money entirely. Because here's what I've learned after decades of watching people build wealth and watching others squander it. Money is never really about money. Let me ask you something. Why do you want financial freedom? Really dig deep. Why? Is it so you can buy more things, bigger houses, fancier cars? Maybe at first, when you're young and struggling, when you're stressed about bills, you think that's what you want. But I'll tell you what happens when you actually achieve financial independence. The things, they stop mattering. What starts to matter is time. Time with people you love. Time doing work that matters to you. not work you're forced to do. Time pursuing curiosity, time being generous, time being present. Financial freedom, real financial freedom, isn't about having money. It's about having choice. Too, and this is where dividend investing reveals its deepest gift, because unlike other wealth building strategies, unlike starting a business that consumes your life, unlike climbing the corporate ladder that trades your time for money, dividend investing gives you something else entirely. It gives you a rising tide of passive income that flows to you whether you're working or resting, whether you're young or old, whether you're healthy or sick. It decouples your income from your time. And that decoupling, that freedom, it changes everything. Suddenly, you can take a job you love, even if it pays less, because your dividends cover the difference. Suddenly, you can say no to opportunities that don't serve you, because you're not desperate. Suddenly, you can be generous with your time and money, because you're operating from abundance rather than scarcity. Suddenly, you can breathe. I think about all the people I've known who died with regrets. Not one of them, not a single one, regretted not making more money. They regretted not spending more time with their children. They regretted working jobs they hated for decades. They regretted playing it safe when they should have taken risks, or taking risks when they should have been prudent. They regretted not living, truly living, while they had the chance. But here's what haunts me most. Many of them, they were trapped. They couldn't quit the job they hated because they needed the paycheck. They couldn't take time off to be with their sick parent because they couldn't afford it. They couldn't pursue their passion because bills had to be paid. They were imprisoned, not by bars, but by financial desperation. And it didn't have to be that way. If they had started earlier, if they had been more patient, if they had planted those dividend seeds decades ago, they could have been free. They could have made different choices. They could have lived different lives. This is why I'm so passionate about dividend investing. Not because I love finance. Not because I think money is the meaning of life. But because I've seen with my own eyes what financial freedom does for the human soul. It allows you to become who you were meant to be. When you're not constantly stressed about money, when you're not grinding yourself into dust just to survive, when you're not one emergency away from catastrophe, you have space, mental space, emotional space, spiritual space, space to think, space to create, space to love, space to grow. And in that space, life becomes something entirely different. So when I tell you to invest in dividend-paying companies, when I tell you to be patient for 15 or 20 years, when I tell you to reinvest every dividend and trust the process, I'm not just giving you financial advice. I'm giving you a path to a different kind of life, a life where you wake up without anxiety, where you make decisions based on values rather than fear, where you have the freedom to be generous, because you're no longer operating from scarcity, where you can look your children in the eyes and know that you're not just surviving, you're thriving. And you're teaching them, not through lectures but through example, what's actually possible when you align yourself with time rather than fighting against it. Now, I want to address something for those of you who are feeling behind. Those of you who are thinking, I'm already 45, 50, 55. Is it too late for me? Listen to me carefully. You're going to be 65 someday. That day is coming, whether you like it or not, whether you prepare for it or not. The question isn't whether time will pass. Time will pass. The question is, who will you be when it does? Will you be someone who gave up, who decided it was too late, who surrendered to circumstance? Or will you be someone who started anyway, who planted seeds, even late in the season, knowing that some harvest is better than no harvest? I've known people who started dividend investing at 55, and by 65 had built portfolios generating $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 a year in passive income. That's not retirement to a beach house money, but it's I can work part-time money. It's I can help my grandkids with college money. It's I can breathe easier money. And that is priceless. For those of you who are young, in your 20s or 30s, you have something more valuable than any amount of money. You have time. And time, in the world of compounding, is everything. If you start now, if you commit now, if you embrace this path with discipline and patience, By the time you're 58, you won't just be comfortable. You'll be wealthy. Not flashy celebrity wealthy, but deeply, permanently, peacefully wealthy. You'll have options your peers can't even imagine. You'll wake up every day knowing that you're free, that you've won the game, that the rest of your life is about purpose, not survival. But only if you start now. Only if you resist the temptation to look rich in favor of actually being free. And here's something I need you to understand about legacy. The wealth you build through dividend investing, it doesn't have to end with you. Margaret, that librarian I told you about, she left $3 million to her children. But more importantly, she left them an example. She showed them that wealth isn't about luck. It's about choices. It's about patience. It's about aligning yourself with principles that work and trusting them, even when everyone around you thinks you're crazy. Her grandchildren, they watched their grandmother live modestly while secretly building an empire of dividend-paying stocks. They learned that true wealth whispers while poverty shouts. And now, some of those grandchildren, they're following the same path. They're building their own dividend portfolios. They're teaching their children. One woman's decision to be patient, to be disciplined, to trust in the power of compounding. It's rippling forward through generations. That's not just wealth, that's a legacy. So let me leave you with this. Tonight, when you go to bed, I want you to imagine something. Imagine yourself 20 years from now. You wake up, and before you even get out of bed, you check your phone. There's a notification. Your quarterly dividends just hit your account. $3,000, $5,000, maybe $10,000. Whatever the number, it's enough to matter, enough to change your month, maybe enough to cover your living expenses entirely. You didn't work for that money. You didn't trade your time for it. It just arrived, like rainfall, like harvest, like the natural consequence of seeds planted long ago. You get out of bed, not because you have to, but because you want to. Because your day is yours, your time is yours, your life is yours. You look in the mirror and you see someone who made a decision decades ago, a decision that seemed small at the time, a decision to be patient, to be boring, to trust in the power of dividend growth. And that decision, it changed everything to that future. It's not fantasy. It's not reserved for the lucky or the brilliant or the connected. It's available to anyone willing to do three things. Start. Stay patient. Don't quit. That's it. That's the secret. That's the whole game. The companies are out there waiting. The dividends are ready to flow. The compounding is eager to work in your favor. All you have to do is begin. And so, beloved viewers, respected seekers, dear friends on this journey, I leave you with one final thought. The poorest person isn't the one with the smallest bank account. The poorest person is the one who gave up on their future, who surrendered to circumstances, who decided that change was impossible. But you who have listened this far, you who have absorbed these truths, you are not poor. You're wealthy in potential, wealthy in time, wealthy in possibility. Now, you just need to make a choice. Will you walk this path? Will you embrace patience? Will you trust in the power of dividend growth? Or will you continue as you were, hoping for miracles, waiting for luck, watching the years slip away? The choice, as it always has been, as it always will be, is yours too. I've given you the map. I've shown you the way. I've shared the wisdom of decades, distilled into these moments together. Now, the journey is yours to take. Plant the seeds, water them, protect them, give them time. And one day, not today, not tomorrow, but someday, you'll sit in the shade of trees you planted long ago. You'll feel the warmth of dividends flowing like sunlight. And you'll understand finally, fully, completely, that the best time to start was yesterday. But the second best time is now to go forth with wisdom. Go forth with patience. Go forth with hope. Build your dividend portfolio. Build your freedom. Build your legacy. And may your future self, 20 years from now, thank you for the decision you make today. I believe in you. Now, go make it happen.